Alex, you remember when we started planning out this podcast and we talked about having certain guests on as a goal?
Yeah, way back like a month ago, 2 months ago. I don't know.
Yeah, well, today on Plugged In, our guest is the person that we were looking forward to as our goal, Andrew Wells from Eidola.
Sweet. Very stoked to be here, man. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. Like we're stoked to have you. I actually first met these guys. I met Trystan and our friend Chanta at one of your shows back in May, last May in Riverside, actually.
Yeah, on the with oranges and Vise, right?
Yep, that was the first day I met Trystan actually, and
Nice.
got to meet you guys after. It was a great show, and yeah, so that's been like a really powerful memory of mine from this whole scene of music. So thank you guys for making awesome music and just being awesome, basically.
Yeah, thanks for supporting it, man. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, so first off, I mean, I just want to give our listeners like a little bit of background into Idola and what it's about, like in case some of them haven't heard of you guys. So just can you give a little bit of background about what Idola is about, when you guys started, just whatever information you want to give about the band for someone who maybe hasn't heard of you at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So Idola started in 2011. We had basically a couple of us had been in bands together growing up. Different post-hardcore bands and different styles, and we all kind of parted ways. And then by some crazy fate, we all came together. We all ended up moving back to Utah and being in the same place. And so me, Matt Domer, and James Johnson ended up starting the idea and the concept that is Idola. And we went through, God, 100 names, 200 names before we settled on Eidola, which is plural for the word eidolon, which means a specter or a phantom or an ideal or like an ideology. So we came up with that concept that we were all kind of from different walks of life growing up, and we'd all been raised with different faiths and creeds and beliefs. And when we came together to make music, we kind of said, okay, well, what do we want this to stand for? What do we want this to embody? And it came down to a collective of ideals, working symbiotically together to achieve something or to ask a question in order to propel art forward. So we got together in 2011 and started playing shows, and we recorded a little EP that sounds like garbage, and then we did a DIY full length, which sounds a little better. We did 12 songs for an album called The Great Glass Elephant, and we played with a band called Stolas in Salt Lake City on their first tour, on their Living Creatures tour. And we opened up for them, and it was like, it was only like 50 kids, 60 kids. But we had a really great time. We ended up giving them a CD, and they took it back and showed it to Will. And Will hit me up and was like, "Hey, when are you going to make another one?" And so
Nice.
I told him, I was like, "Well, I've got, we had just put it out at that point. It was out for like a month or two, and I was like, well, I've got 6 songs. I've got, I'm doing pre-pro for right now. Let's work this out." And so Will Swan from Gavin Dance, just one of my favorite bands for a long time, communicating with me saying, okay, let's hear what you guys got, and we'll see what we can do. And so I ended up sending him all the pre-production demos for our most recent record, Degeneratera, and he got them, and he's like, okay, these all sound great. Let's get you in the studio. And so we got time with Josh Benton in Sacramento, California, and we all flew out there. We slept on the floor and just went for a month straight and recorded Degeneratera on Blue Swan Records. And then that record came out in May of 2015, and we've just been touring our little dicks off since. So it's we've just been touring as much as possible. We've done a few shows with Gavin. We did a full US with Stolas and Artifacts Pareo and little headliners here and there. Just to have some fun and build the brand. And then most recently, after those year and a half of touring, we finished writing our newest record, and we just finished recording it last month with Drew Owens in Sacramento. So that is something to definitely look forward to, hopefully in the next couple months.
Nice. So going back a little bit to one thing you mentioned, that must have been a pretty surreal feeling to like go from being like an independent band. You said you did your first album like completely by yourselves, and then you got recognized by Will Swan. Like, what was that like? Like just going from like touring independently and all that to all of a sudden like one of your favorite bands recognized you.
It was really surreal, and then it was even more surreal when he asked me to play for Dance Gavin Dance.
Yeah.
That was even more just like, is this real life? There's no way that this is real life. It was really surreal. I mean, Will is a great guy. He's one of my best friends now. I love him to death. When we first started, he hit us up, and we didn't really know him. We didn't really know what to expect. We'd never signed to a label. We'd gotten a couple offers, but the offers were pretty crap.
Right.
And so when we talked with Will and we got that set up, it was a dream come true, really. And then working with him, he came in the studio when we did Degeneratera, and it was great from a production aspect of things. He was great. He wasn't too heavy-handed. He was very engaged, very involved with us, and he was very true to what we wanted to convey with that record. So, which was really cool. We even had him come and do. He did like a little guest scream on a song called Omega Third Temple. He
Nice.
did like a little underlay guest scream. That was pretty cool too. So.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed about Blue Swan that I think really stands out is you get some types of labels where they do sort of only sign bands that are, or they sort of make a band conform to what the label is about, where I feel like what I've noticed with Will and with Blue Swan, just from my perspective, is like he really tries to make the band their vision the focus, and he's fine with having sort of different perspectives and different types of things sonically from his bands on his roster. Would you say that's pretty accurate?
That's extremely accurate. I would say, like, if you ever got to know Will and you let's say you rode in a car with him and let him DJ, you would see that he listens to some insane shit. Like, he listens to stuff that's all over the board musically. And some of that comes through in like Dance Gavin Dance guitar and composition, but when you're with him, I mean, he has such an eclectic taste in music. So when he signs bands on, that's kind of his intention, is like, hey, I like what you're doing. I want you to keep doing it. Let's refine it. Let's hone it in. Let's make it something that is true to you, but also something that can speak to a listener. He takes bands that may need a little bit of development. Maybe some bigger labels say, oh no, that band's it's going to take too much time and money to develop that band. Will doesn't give a shit about that. Will is really in it for the art. He's really in it for giving a band an opportunity to shine and be in their own place and develop their fan base the way they want to, develop their sound the way they want to, which is awesome. There's not a lot of people in the industry that allow bands to do that and can say it's a successful endeavor for the label and for the bands. So it's definitely a mutually beneficial thing.
That's great.
Well, going off of the whole, Will allowing you guys to, and all the other bands on Blue Swan to, kind of perfect their art in their own way without being heavy-handed. Could you give us a little bit of the background on Degeneratera, like what the lyrics mean to you, what the story that you're trying to convey to the listener is?
Yeah, absolutely. With Degeneratera, I did a little interview with Teal Cheese,
Yes.
where I went in detail, song by song. And I think for this new record, I'm going to do like a Spotify commentary for it, just to really give the listeners something tangible they can go back to and reference, like on Spotify or on YouTube, where there's a direct commentary, because the lyrics definitely come from a very interesting place. And I've gotten asked about it a lot of times. People, because you have different ends of the spectrum. You have like really abstract, old school post-hardcore, or like even like post-metal and some of these influences that are very abstract, very tongue-in-cheek, very metaphorical. And then you have like pop music, where the lyrics are pretty blatantly apparent what the intention of the song is, I'm
Right.
singing about my girlfriend. I'm singing about making money. I'm singing about the struggle, whatever the fuck that means. So, I like to think that with Eidola we strive to try to find a balance between the two, something that's practical so that the listener isn't completely disengaged or it's not completely left up to subjective interpretation. There is some literal meaning or some factual or historical meaning, as well as a subjective meaning. Because in my life, my influences like singer-songwriters like Anthony Green. I grew up listening to Seosin and Circus Survive, and the lyrics that he writes are largely subjective. And he said that, Anthony said that in interviews. He and I have talked about it a few times, where his lyrics are largely subjective, but they have some type of basis, some type of story, some type of personal meaning. And I think that's why his sound and his lyrics are so captivating and so engaging to his audience. That's why people love what he does, because they feel connected to it, but it still leaves a little bit of room for interpretation. So with Degeneratera, I basically took a concept that James, my bass player, and I developed, which was to kind of look at dichotomies in the universe over a large spectrum of time. So dichotomies between science and religion, dichotomies between sociological concept and anthropological concepts, and we took all these concepts and we kind of laid it out as this as opposing structures. And so the album is set up where track 1 and track 13 are juxtaposed. Track 1 is called Pseudo-Monarchia Daemonum, which is it's a King Solomon rendition of the Book of Demons. And then De Coelestia Hierarchia, which is the 13th track on that record, is the Book of the Seven Archangels in a lot of Christianity, Catholicism, and just a lot of subsects of Christian planes of thought. So those dichotomies, we chose to explore that on that record and build a concept around exploring both those mediums. And there are a lot of historical references in there. You'll catch like Omni, First Temple. The Temple series is specifically a time. It's basically a concept of time. It's to enable a time modality within that concept. So First Temple being King Solomon's temple, Second Temple being that temple that was rebuilt, and then Third Temple, which is a conceptual temple. If you look into certain faiths like Judaism or Islam, you see there are thought processes and theories and predictions for what a third temple would be, since it's based in Jerusalem. There's no longer a physical structure for that, but you do see in those religions and those faiths a lot of speculation about it. And so we wanted to ask a lot of questions. We wanted to go and explore those themes and explore human consciousness, explore what's kind of led us to this point for Degeneratera. So with the new album, the way that I have been thinking about it, the way I've been describing it is still a concept record, but it's a little bit more direct to the listener. So there are two books I really like to compare it to. So there's a guy named Ram Dass. He's a Richard Alpert. He was a professor back in the 70s, the 60s and 70s, with a guy named Timothy Leary. And anyone who knows Timothy Leary knows he was a huge proponent of psychedelic drug research in the medical community. He was researching LSD and psilocybin mushrooms, psilocin, to help patients with cancer, help children with seizures, help elevate a consciousness. And obviously that got shut down with the whole war on drugs, and even prior to that ended up getting shut down. But Ram Dass, he was this guy who was in that movement. He was taking a ton of LSD and tripping out and doing all these studies, and then he finally went to the Himalayas. He went and he studied under the Maharaji there and became this yogi. He became this like pretty prolific yogi, and he wrote a book called Be Here Now, which I would highly recommend to anyone. It's a beautifully composed book. It's got tons of illustrations and really great content, and the way it's set up is beautiful. It's just an incredible book, and it's a lot of psychedelic concepts and a lot of like abstract conceptual planes of thought. And so I would like to say Degeneratera is kind of that book in a way, symbolically. And then Ram Dass followed it up with a book called Grist for the Mill, which is much shorter, no illustrations, no like crazy abstraction. It's really just like to the point, like, hey, I know I talked about all these psychedelic spiritual concepts. Here's how you can apply them to your life. Here's some very real world references. Here's some very practical concepts that you can implement to improve your life or elevate your consciousness. And both books they stand alone. They're great books. And I would compare our new record to Grist for the Mill. It's basically taking a lot of themes and a lot of motifs that Degeneratera contain and almost compartmentalizing it into something that's, a little more palatable in certain ways lyrically. It's a little bit more direct to the listener. They can apply some of these concepts a little more directly. It doesn't span an abstraction of time. It's pretty straightforward in a lot of ways while still maintaining subjectivity. So that's kind of what I would say about the concept difference between those two.
Mm-hmm. Right, because when I first listened to Degeneratera, one of my initial impressions was there was obviously a lot of depth there, and some of it kind of went over my head the first couple listens, but then I read Nick Teal's piece that you had done about the track-by-track explanation, and it was like that really hit home to me that I feel like you and the rest of the band, in a sense, are really not just scholars of music, but also scholars of religion, scholars of philosophy, and I feel like that perspective is really sort of not as common in this scene as you may expect. You bring sort of a worldly, studied perspective, I think, isn't as prevalent in some. I'm not saying other bands don't have that, but I'm saying oftentimes you would expect just very personal, like exclusively personal lyrics from sort of a narrow perspective in some bands in this genre, and you guys sort of break down that whole barrier and really sort of tie in all these concepts that you may not expect into what still turns out to be very personal songs. So I think that's really impressive.
Thanks. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I couldn't agree more. That's what we strive to do. We strive to find meaning in a lot of these things and really ask a question and start a conversation. And that's with the new record. I'm really excited for you guys to hear it. There's no better way that we could have captured that. It really is like the record that I've tried to make my whole life, basically. It's a really good combination, both sonically and lyrically, between our first two records, and then everything is elevated. The musicianship's elevated, the songwriting's elevated, the lyrical content is elevated. We really collaborated on a lot of really cool stuff that I'm really proud of. So. Right.
One time when a friend asked me about your band and asked me to describe what it was like, basically, I actually said it was kind of like walking in on a college class taught by like the best professor ever, basically. Someone who has like a worldly perspective. Because in my favorite college courses, it's like the best professors to me, the best teachers in life in general, aren't people who just tell you their perspective and just leave it at that. They engage with you and they try to give you the lesson, but also relay it to you and make you a part of that discussion. And I feel like I feel like your music, it's not to say it's like lecturing or anything like that, but it's like I feel like you can, if you try, you can learn a lot from it while still being engaged and feeling like you are a part of the listening experience.
Absolutely. I love that explanation. That's what we really try to do is again, engage the audience and engage the listener in a conversation and a thought process. We're not here to tell you how to think. We're not here to tell you what to think. We're here to say, okay, well, you think this way. Is there other modalities of thought that could apply here? Are there other aspects that you're not considering that may be faulty in your thinking or may solidify your thinking? That's kind of our goal. And that to me is the goal of a lot of good art. Like what I would subjectively perceive as good art makes me think and makes me question and allows me to explore a thought process that I may have not done otherwise without viewing that art or perceiving it. You get a lot of artists that are like protests artists. They're very politically engaged, and it's like they have every right to do that, and that's their intention. You have artists that their whole intention is making money, and they capitalize on the lowest common denominator, which is, things that everyone feels: love and loss, and pain and happiness. Those are very, very surface level things that everyone feels, so they're easy to capitalize on and they're easy to sell people on. But our intention isn't that. Our intention is to engage a listener, allow them to think, and hopefully elevate their life however they want to, and be subjectively inspired to do what they want to and feel that they have the freedom to do that within their own consciousness. So that's kind of our method as a band, and it's been good so far. It's been healthy for us. It's also very cathartic for us to just write the songs that we do and express and work through a lot of these thoughts that we ourselves have on a daily basis. So. Mm.
So going off of that, a lot of bands I've talked to, they often say that a producer can either like just be sort of a passive observer, or they can be more hands-on with the process. You worked with Drew Owens, as you said, on this new album. What sort of role do you think he brought to the table as compared to like maybe producers you've worked with before, or do you think he brought something fresh to the table, or was it about what you expected?
It was not what I expected in the best way possible. We worked with, for our very first record, we worked with a guy named Randy Cordner, and it was a very informal experience. It was, he was a very local guy. We were a very local band. Like, it was kind of a hodgepodge, like, oh, hey, when can you record vocals? Oh, you can record for an hour today? Okay, I'll come in and do an hour. Oh, when can you do guitar? Okay, I'll come in Saturday and do 2 hours or whatever. And it took like 8 straight months to track that record, because it was just finding the time, when we could get together. So when we progressed to Josh Benton, that was the first like legitimate studio and legitimate engineer or producer that we'd ever worked with. And he and Josh worked together to kind of shape our sound and refine some things, but they weren't super hands-on.
Right.
It would basically be like, okay, that riff is cool, but how can we make it a little bit better? And be changing like a chord here or there, or changing a bass note, or changing a drum fill. Really minor stuff, or changing a harmony, or very minor alterations of a lead line vocally. We didn't change any lyrics at all with Josh. And again, it wasn't super hands-on, but I loved working with Josh. He's a really good friend of mine. He's an extremely talented engineer, and very, very music-minded. He has some great ideas when it comes to production. Drew is just, he's the best I've ever worked with, hands down. I love Josh. He's super talented. I do want to make stuff with him in the future. Drew just really showed me a perspective of thinking and a production style that I fell in love with. He's a great guy. He's really, really passionate about what he does. He's really easy to get along with. If you're doing takes over and over again, he'll work with you. He'll encourage you, but he's also a no bullshit guy. Like, if you're fucking up the takes, he'll tell you. He'll be like, no, we gotta change that up, or we gotta have Andrew do this guitar part because it's too fucky, it's too crazy, or we gotta disassociate the drums. We gotta do the hands and the feet separately on this particular fill because it's just so insane. We gotta nail it, and that's what I also loved about Drew is we would do so many takes just to make sure it was perfect. We would go back over things. There were songs between all the harmonies and the counterpoints and the lead vocals where there were a couple of songs where I did over 1,000 takes of vocals easily.
Wow.
Jeez.
And it was because Drew would say things like, okay, well, yeah, I could cut this up. I could make this work. It's Pro Tools. I can make this work however we want, but I want you to nail it. I need this to be perfect so that we can put out the most honest, piece of art that we possibly can. And so we would do that. We went over our time by 2 weeks so that we could make sure that everything in this record was spick and span. And Drew's production style was great. He would tell you if a part didn't work, or if, there was one song, there's a new song called Low Tie on the record. And it's the kind of the softer song on the record. It's kind of like the humble ledger of this record. And it's one of Drew's favorite songs, and we took a look at the second guitar, and we were like, well, it there are certain sections here. It doesn't sound like it's super fleshed out yet. I want you guys to go home, and just write to this for the next day and try to come up with as many new parts as you can. And so Matt Domer and I sat down and we just hashed that guitar part out 100 times. And we came back in the studio the next day, laid it down, and it was, it made the song 100 times better. And that's what a producer should do. He should take what your vision is and improve it without stepping on your toes. So again, with this process, we didn't change any lyrics. There were no lyrical changes in this with Drew. Very minor, melody changes. He would offer up. He's a very talented singer too.
Oh yeah.
So he with Consider the Thief. The guy's super talented. And so he would come in and he would throw harmony ideas at me left and right, which I loved. I loved where we would, I'd show him a harmony. He'd be like, okay, that's cool. Let's change this note, or let's try this new harmony. Let's try a third harmony here. And so he did a really, really good job guiding us to make something that's really the best thing we've ever done, for sure. It's the best we've ever sounded by far.
Mm-hmm. When I first heard you guys were doing a record with Drew Owens, I was like, that's perfect. Because honestly, Consider the Thief to me was kind of like I'd say they have a lot of parallels with your band, if in some ways, I think, because they also sort of tied in a lot of spiritual themes, a lot of more broad perspectives, yet still made it very personal. I feel like those are two. Your band and Consider the Thief do have a lot of parallels in that way, and as soon as I heard he was producing, I felt like he's gonna push it to the next level, and I'm glad that it seems like that's what happened.
Absolutely, yeah. He pushed us to some great heights. The songwriting initially, it's kind of funny. Like he had all our pre-production demos that we had recorded, and he'd listened through them a bunch of times, and he'd given us some feedback on them, and he kept saying that the two things that he said throughout the process, recording this record, he said that we went harder in every possible way, and that the album was like, there was one morning we came in, he's like, yeah, I went back and listened to Degeneratera a few times, and it's a good record, but man, you guys went way harder on this record, like tech wise and composition wise and vocally, like everything is just to the max from a composition standpoint. And so you take something like that's an improvement of a band, and you put it with a producer who knows how to capitalize on that improvement and really drive it to the limit, and you end up with a record that hopefully is something that stands the test of time. That's definitely the goal, is to have something that people can relate to and come back to time and time again, and still be impressed by and still be inspired by. So yeah, working with Drew was just fantastic. He really pushed it to the next level. And we had an option, we had a couple of different engineers that we were looking at, and I'd talked to Will, and it really was, between talking to Will and my homies with A Lot Like Birds and people that had worked with a lot of the same producers, and they all recommended Drew. Just, he was fantastic. I couldn't be more stoked to have gone with him, or more grateful for the work that he did.
That's great. Trystan, I know you wanted to ask a bit more about the lyrics of the record, right?
Yeah, I did, because concept records to me are the greatest thing ever. All my favorite albums are concept records, and Degeneratera has definitely gotten up there really fast, since its release. Just probably top 3, definitely of just stuff that I listen to all the time. So lyrically, what kind of place did you were you in where you wrote that stuff, and with all the passion, despite the fact that it's so philosophical and semi disconnected from real experiences, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question. First off, I'm stoked that that it made it in your top 3. That's great. That's awesome. The place that I was in with that album, with Degeneratera, was a place in my life where honestly I was considering giving up on music and giving up on the things that I was so passionate about. And I was in kind of a confused place. When we were writing that record, we had put out The Great Glass Elephant, and we'd gotten some offers. We'd already been a band for, a year or two at that point, and we'd gotten some offers that didn't look good. We were really struggling to get a booking agent and a manager, and we were booking our own DIY tours, and they really weren't, doing well, as with any DIY tour generally in the post-hardcore scene. It's like really, it's like pulling teeth to make money on those tours. And when you don't make money, it's hard. It's hard to sustain that lifestyle and justify being out on tour. You ask any touring musician, except for maybe Will, who just lives for the road. Like, any touring musician will tell you it's always worth it, but it's rough. It's a rough life. You're gone from your friends and your family and any type of comfort or stability for months at a time. And when you're not actually making money on that, and you have to come back and do a day job every day when you get home, it's rough. It's rough on the psyche. It's rough on, your perception of creating art, I think. So when I wrote Degeneratera, it was from a place of, I really want to show people something. I really want to engage an audience in some of these concepts I've been researching and struggling with for my whole life. And I want it to be something that's conceptual, something that's philosophical, something that really taps into the human element of what this struggle is about. And when I started to do that, and Will had hit us up, it was an even bigger incentive to do my research and dive into what this concept could be. And so James and I kind of sat down and we go, okay, how do we really capture these ideas? This almost like this time traveling wizard going through these places in time and humanity, and observing, what people were doing and why they were doing it, and exploring the dichotomies between these subjects, whether it be drug addiction and abuse, or just struggling to comprehend, poverty, or your own reality, or privilege, or any of those concepts that we struggle with in any society. So I was in a place where I was doing a lot of reading. I was reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I was reading Be Here Now. I started reading the Bhagavad Gita and the Quran, going back through the Bible, going through some of these alternative concept books, and getting into lucid dreaming as well, getting into a whole metaphysical concept, and starting to do some research into physics and entropy and a lot of these things that I wanted to explore, because I feel like, in the human realm, to limit yourself and limit your knowledge, it really limits your overall experience. And so I feel like I wanted to convey a lot of that emotion and passion that I had for that knowledge and that thirst into the music. And so that was definitely a place that I was in when I wrote that album. I was definitely in a place that was striving for something more, wanting something bigger for myself and for these guys that I was writing this music with. And Will, we were lucky enough that Will picked us up and gave us the opportunity, gave us the platform to show that to people. And it's been awesome. The reception has been great ever since, and we just continued to build it. And I think the new album's just going to be an even better showcase of that on an even bigger platform. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that this one is the one that makes you guys just blow up, because after Generatera came out, I was like, why aren't these guys bigger? Like Stolas just signed to Equal Vision, and I was like, why isn't Eidola on Equal Vision? Come on.
I've been saying for a while that you guys are going to be like the next Thrice or something, and I still believe it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, like I said, the reception has been good so far. We've been on that steady slope that we're basically still on par with bands like Stolas and Icarus, and bands in our same realm where we're kind of those up and coming touring national touring bands, and that's been really great. It's been Degeneratera was successful, just like Stolas' records were successful on Blue Swan, and I've talked to Dan from EVR a couple of times, and we've actually talked to a couple of people. We talked to a lady in their A&R department about doing a record. Actually, this new record we were in talks about doing something with EVR and a couple of other places, and we had decided we wanted to stick with our contract with Blue Swan for this album specifically, and see what we can really do by still being self-managed, with Donovan as our booking agent. He's been fantastic the whole time. He's been really great at growing us in the right way, getting us on some really good tours, like our upcoming tour with Chon and Dance Gavin Dance, to our tour with Kurt and a Marionette. We've been friends with the Marionette for a long time. Those guys have been at it for longer than we have, and they slay. It's another example of a band that's like up and coming, and they really just need the exposure and the right record, the right hit to blow it up. You know what I mean? Just like you said. So it's really cool that we're able to continue to grow it. And I hope the same thing, man. I hope that this new record is what really gets it to the point where we could do a headliner and sell out, 500 cap rooms. That would be a great dream of mine. And with the help of people that are engaged and they want to find something new to listen to, and they want to share in an experience, I think that with that kind of community effort, it can definitely happen. Like, it could be a great thing. So
Right. So I guess right now we could, Trystan, I think we could take a quick break, and then we could when we come back, we can discuss a bit about Dance Gavin Dance. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, that works for me. In the meantime, this is Omni First Temple by Eidola.
All right, we're back with Andrew from Eidola and also touring with Dance Gavin Dance. So, Andrew, right now we wanted to talk a little bit about your other main side project, I guess you could say. You've been touring for the last year or so with DGD, who, as you said, was one of your favorite bands of all time. And I mean, how has that experience been? Just being on the road with a band that you've been such a big fan of, and even getting to contribute to their creative process.
It's been a dream come true. I really enjoy working with all of those guys, including Johnny and Kurt. They're all friends of mine that are just really, really fun guys to play with and fun guys to work on new music with. I just actually finished a second guitar for a new Dance Gavin song like yesterday. So for doing a new demo, which it's definitely sounding good. So they're just really fun guys to work with. They're fun guys to tour with. It's a really cool experience. It's really great exposure to go out and do some of those tours and meet a lot of fans in different places and meet Eidola fans at some of those shows has been awesome. You know, like I just did the 10-year Europe tour with them where we did a bunch of shows in the UK and we did Germany and Netherlands. And, you know, meeting Eidola fans out there that were wearing the shirts and the hoodies and you know, having me sign CDs, it was really surreal, you know.
Yeah.
Seeing kids in other countries all over the place that, you know, knew who Eidola was and listened to us and cared enough to come say hi and do that. So it was really, really cool. And touring with Dance is awesome. They're great guys. The sets are always fun. The guitar parts are always fun. It's really cool too. It's given me an opportunity to grow as a guitar player and a songwriter immensely because, you know, Will plays all of Will's parts and he's just an unreal guitar player. But when I come in and I do sets for Dance, I have to learn Zach's playing style, Martin's playing style, Will's playing style, you know, Josh Benton. Like I have to go through 4 or 5 different guitar players and learn how they play, and they play drastically differently. You know, Martin is a shredder. That guy is crazy good. You know, he plays some intense metal, and he's just shreds. And then Zach is just the master of funk, man. He just great composition in general. You know, you go back to the Death Star. Whenever I'm learning stuff off of that, and I'm like, man, this kid was really fucking good. He's a great songwriter and he is a great guitar player. And so learning those parts has really helped me improve as a musician immensely. Just learning those styles and kind of putting myself in those positions. So.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that's always impressed.
Going off.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Alex.
Okay. So one of the things that's always impressed me about DGD in general has just been how, like you said, how they take all these disparate like styles. Like they'll have funk aspects, they'll have post-hardcore, obviously, and they'll tie it all together into something that can seem like on first listen to maybe be like, where'd that come from? But then you listen more and you're like, that makes perfect sense. Like on Mothership, there was a song, I believe it was Chocolate Jackalope, where Will did an interpolation of Hotline Bling by Drake, and like every time I listen to that, I just am like, that's so perfect. Like that only Will could think of something like that.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Chocolate Jackalope is insane. Yeah. He definitely does a lot of that stuff. He that guy has a crazy mind, and he cranks out songs so fast. It's pretty unreal. Yeah, he's really fun to work with. Tapping into his brain is a lot of fun.
Sorry, Tristan,
so
I cut you off.
With your work with DGD, yeah, it's all right. With your work with DGD, you said that you had been writing second guitar for a demo of a new DGD track. How did you get into writing Deception off Mothership for them? Like, was it like Will asking you, like, oh, hey, Andrew, you want to, join on a track? Or did you, like, bring him something like, oh, I don't know if it fits for Eidola, do you want to try working this into a DGD track?
It was definitely the former. Will is definitely the primary composer for all things Dance Gavin Dance. Like, he'll usually pre-pro a lot of stuff himself, like even bass and drums initially, and then he'll have Tim and Matt go and rework everything. When it came to Deception, I had done, a couple tours with him at that point, a couple one-offs. We did the South by So What last year, and Will had called me up and he said, "Hey, you want to try to write something for a DGD song?" I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to." And so he sent me the demo for Deception. I spent a couple days and wrote all the G2 for that, and then when Eidola was on a tour, we were on that Orange's V's tour, and we were in Portland. We played at the Analog Theater, and they were recording, like Will was recording guitar that week, and so it worked out perfectly. So I came into Chris's studio and met with Chris for the first time and laid down the Guitar 2 on Deception that day. We basically had gotten in that morning. I tracked for like 8 straight hours to get that song done, and then went and played that show at the Analog that night. So it was a pretty intensive process. I think we even had to drive all night from the previous show to get to Portland on time so I could come in the morning, track all day for that song, and get it done. So it was a lot of fun. And then he called me up like a day later when we were actually on the tour, and he was like, "Hey, I got some guitar parts from Zach for Chucky, and they're good, but I want somebody else's input on this too." And so I ended up writing, I would say between Zach and I, it's a pretty much a 50-50 split on the Deception, or on the Chucky parts. So yeah, I think Will ended up recording all of Chucky. Like he actually laid the tracks down, but Zach and I both contributed, I would say, probably about 50-50 for the actual Guitar 2 writing process of that song. It's like that very first line with some of that riffage is me, but then the chorus is definitely Zach. So there's a lot of cool trading off there for sure.
Nice. I actually didn't know that. I know that for the Mothership liner notes, it says that Zach contributed writing but didn't perform on Chucky, but doesn't say anything about the 50-50 split between you guys. So that's kind of a really cool fact to know.
Yeah, it was cool, man. That was a really cool song to write. And then this new demo that I just got yesterday is it's a pretty happy sounding song, but it's cool. It's a cool jam. So yeah, I think Will, at least for the foreseeable future, is going to continue to leverage some of the guitar players that he's worked with in the past to help him with some of the Guitar 2. It keeps things fresh. You get guitar players that have all these different styles, and if this guy writes 2 songs and Martin writes 2 songs and I write 2 songs, and it's like you get a little bit of flavor in each jam, and it makes each record kind of stand on its own.
Yeah, it's like a very collaborative process, which I think is pretty cool, because they've always had a lot of different lineups anyway, so it's kind of like just taking advantage of the fact that they've always had so many different people kind of come and go, and just make it something that works for them, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. It's a good plan. I mean, it keeps things moving forward. It keeps things from being stagnant for sure.
So another thing we were curious about is how are you going to keep yourself just mentally energized on this upcoming tour with DGD, where you're going to have to play 2 sets every night?
Yeah, we'll see if I go fucking crazy. It's gonna be crazy. I've never done 2 sets on an entire tour before, so it'll be interesting. The Eidola set is almost 30 minutes long, and then the dance set, I believe, is close to an hour. So it'll be about an hour and a half of set work every night. And I mean, I go hard as fuck for both bands, so it's
gonna be fun.
Kind
of,
I
can imagine it's gonna be exhausting too.
Pretty physically draining, I'm sure, but luckily I'll be.
Yeah, I remember talking to Eric from Hail the Sun when he was playing with DGD, and he's like, "Yeah, it's exhausting." Yeah,
I can only imagine. Every time I've talked to Will or Eric doing two sets of tour, it's pretty rough.
Oh, I mean, I'm hoping that you can survive it, but gotta hit the gym. Make sure that you're staying.
Oh yeah, dude.
Refreshed every day.
Yep. No, I work out pretty much 6 days a week when I'm home, and then when I'm on tour, like me and Tillian, and I mean even Tim's been getting into it. Mingus has been getting into it recently. But yeah, mainly like me and Tillian and John. We always have like free weights and stuff, so we definitely keep healthy. And a huge perk of touring with dance for me is being able to, if I was touring with Eidola and sleeping in that van every night and having to do 2 sets, oh my God, yeah, that'd be awful. So luckily, Dance Gavin tours in a bandwagon. It's a little bit more manageable. I have a bed to sleep in and a fridge for food, and so I can kind of keep my body and my mind healthy while I'm out there doing 2 sets, because that is important. I mean, if you don't keep yourself healthy, you're not going to sound good every night, and it's just not going to be a fun experience. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be challenging, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to playing for those crowds every night for both bands.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a real fun time. I mean, I'm hitting Santa Ana show, of course, again.
Sweet.
It's the closest one, so.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's gonna be a great tour. I mean, I haven't met any of the Chon guys, but they're super talented, so I'm really excited that we were able to get on that tour. And then I just found out about another tour that we're doing in May, June, ideally for the release of our record. That is going to be really, really cool too. So I can't say anything about it yet, but you guys will know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But going off of the release of the new album, any new songs on the tour?
Yes, 2. Yeah. Yeah, we'll be playing 2 new songs from the record on the tour. We were hoping to have a first single out before the tour, but it was basically the choice between having a really rushed music video before the tour, or like taking our time and planning the release out and doing a proper rollout. And so we went with the latter. We don't want anything to be rushed on this record at all. We don't want any of our aesthetic or any of our artwork or anything to be the least bit rushed. Like, we want to make sure that everything is in place for the release. So yeah, I've talked with Will and Donovan to make sure that the rollout goes smoothly, and everything's looking really, really good so far. But yeah, we are playing 2 new songs on that tour.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm sure both of us.
And new merch designs.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, merch designs. Yeah, we will have. We've got. You guys will be stoked. This is probably the best we've ever had our merch. I'm really excited. We've got beanies, brand new beanies that we got coming out. We've got new hoodies. We've got a couple new shirt designs that I'm really looking forward to, as well as like a tour, like an album specific shirt design for pre-orders that we're going to roll out as well. Some cool new posters and stickers and just a lot of cool stuff. Like, I'm really excited. And we're taking out a girl named Lauren to do our merch for us this time, and she's super great. She's gonna be taking photos of us and Dance Gavin the whole tour and running the booth. So she's gonna be killing it.
Awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like it'll be a real fun time.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. We're all really looking forward to it. We've put a lot of time in the set too. It's been sounding awesome. So.
That's great. Well, I'm sure Tristan and I are both going to be at Santa Ana. We're looking forward to it, man. Like, it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, come say hi for sure. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm excited to hear what you guys think of the new stuff too.
Definitely. Tristan, anything else
Yeah,
you want to get in?
I think that's just about touched it all. I mean, like, we were talking while the call was down, and saying how we weren't really expecting the really in-depth answers. We were hoping for them, but we still weren't necessarily expecting them. And we were reading through our notes on questions, and with the first question, you hit our first 3 questions all lumped into one, and we were just like, wow, dude, I asked Alex, I was like, oh, did you share like our Google Drive document with Andrew? And he's like, no, he just did it all on his own.
Yeah, it's ain't my first rodeo. That's awesome. Yeah, dude, I really appreciate you guys having me on. I'm looking forward to the podcast for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Like, this is really such an honor to have you on.
Yeah, no sweat, guys. I really appreciate it. Yeah, come say hi at the show, man. We'll kick it for sure.
Definitely. All right, well, thank you again. And like I said, we're really looking forward to the new album. Come see Eidola on tour with Dance, Gavin, Dance, and Sean all through. It starts in March, right? I don't have that
Yep,
pulled
it
up
actually. Yep, I fly out for tour rehearsals tomorrow night with Dance, and then the tour starts on Friday. So
Awesome.
February 24th through March 19th. And
Awesome.
then we're on tour with
then-
Kurt Travis and a Marionette from the 19th to the 30th. We'll be playing South by So What this year with some great bands. So.
And then you've got a little bit of time off before that unannounced tour at this point.
Yep, yeah, that tour starts in the middle of May and goes into June. So, yeah, definitely be on a lookout for an announcement for that here pretty quick. It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be with some homies for sure, and our new album should be out on that tour. So,
All right. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, excellent. Looking forward to it.
hell yeah, awesome guys. Thank you guys. Have a good weekend.
You too.
You too. Have a good practice.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.